record on this computer. Okay. Make sure my microphone's on. Yep. Cool. So today we're going to be going over HTML basics. So let's just jump right into it. The first question you might be asking is, what is HTML? Have any of you heard of HTML before? Used it? Some? Okay. For those of you that don't know, HTML is a programming language that you use to make websites. Any website you've ever been to, visited, has, used HTML at the core. And yeah, so it's essentially just a programming language to make websites. Cool. Setting up HTML, I'm going to do a quick run through of how you can start coding HTML on your computer right now if you want to. So let's go ahead and do that. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to find a place to put this HTML code. So I'm going to right click and create a new folder on my desktop. And then now I'm going to open, oh wait, nope, not going to open that. I'm going to open VS Code. It's on my other screen. And inside VS Code, I'm going to go ahead and open up, click this file button up at the top left here, and then go to open folder. I'm going to go to my desktop and I'm going to open up this HTML folder I just made. What? Wait, sorry. Desktop, HTML, open. Cool. So now we have the folder open in VS Code. And then to actually create the HTML file, in this kind of left-hand side here, I can right-click, hit new file, call it whatever I want. I'm going to just call this one lesson.html. And the important thing here is that you have the extension of the file be .html. And now we can start coding in HTML. With HTML, there's a lot of kind of, stuff you have to do to get everything set up. And it's a little bit hard to remember everything you need to do. Luckily, VS Code comes built-in, has a built-in tool that'll let you build all that automatically. So all you have to do to use that is start typing HTML:5. I'm going to hit enter, and then it'll set all that up for us. Yeah. So this is what HTML looks like. If you've never seen it before, essentially it's just a bunch of tags, and those tags have opening and closing variants. So right here, you see at this top here, we have this tag called a head. All a tag is it's just the name of the tag surrounded by these angle brackets. And then for a closing tag on top of, the name of the tag and closing or an angle brackets, you'll also have a slash in front of, what the heck? Have a slash in front of the tag name. And then you can put stuff in between those tags. So in here, you see there's a bunch of stuff inside of here. We don't really need to worry about what's going on in the head right now. What's important for you to know is in the body, everything inside of this tag is what actually gets displayed on the page, right? So I can go ahead and start writing HTML in here, and that'll actually show up on the page. So just as a quick test, I'm going to just write test, and then now we want to actually see it, right? So how do we do that? What we can do is we can go to that folder we just created. We'll see this lesson.html file we just created. We can click on that, and that'll open it up. And as you can see, that I wrote test, and test appears on the page. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I should probably also zoom in on the code, huh? But that's a little tedious. Anytime we make a change, we have to refresh the page, and I forget to do that all the time. So what we can do instead is install this tool that's with VS Code by coming over to on the left side here. You'll see it's this extensions tab. It looks like some blocks with another block coming in. We can click that, and we're going to install an extension called Live Server. Bless you. And then once you see that, you can click on the first result that comes up, and I'm actually going to uninstall it. I meant to do that beforehand. Sorry. But you'll see something like this where it's like install, and then, whoa. You'll see this install button, hit that, and now it's installed. So if you guys are following along, give me a thumbs up when you've done that. Sweet. Cool. Now, I can go to this left-hand side where my lesson.html file is. I can right click on that, and then I can hit open with live server. And that's going to open up this HTML document that we're working on. And if I go ahead and make, oh crap. Yeah, I can't really do that though. Let's see if I can. Sorry, y'all. Technical difficulties. Okay, we'll do something like this. Something like that. Now you'll see if I make a change here and save it, it gets automatically updated in the browser. So it's just, a nice little thing. So I don't have to refresh every time. Cool. How's that sounding so far? Feeling good? Awesome. So now let's start talking about some of the different kinds of tags and what you can do with HTML. When I was first learning, what was helpful for me was to think of it kind of like a Word document. You've all used Word or Google Docs. It's basically that. So the first thing we have is when you're writing a paper, you usually have some sort of title for that paper. And that title text is big and bold, and it's like the first thing you see, right? In HTML, we have a similar thing called headers. And so we can actually make a header by going inside this body tag and writing H1, closing that. And now in between those H1 tags, we can put whatever we want to be big and bold and a header. So I'll write lesson 2. And now when I save that, you can see that we have some big, bold text. Yeah, so those are headers. Now, when you're writing a paper, obviously the most important part is just the regular text, right? So how can we do that in HTML? HTML provides a paragraph tag, and that's just regular text. So coming back into our example document here, or our example HTML file here, I'll write a P tag for paragraph, and this is a paragraph. If I could spell paragraph. Save that, and over here, as now you can see, we just have some regular text. Oh, I said I was going to zoom this in and didn't. I'll zoom this in too. Cool. So those are paragraphs. That's just regular old text. Now let's say I wanted to make a bulleted list, right? Maybe I'm trying to make a list of things I have to do. HTML lets you do that as well. So you can make bulleted lists by going into the HTML file here, typing UL, and that'll actually create the list. But now that we have our list, we need to actually put items inside that list, put some bulleted items in that list. So what we can do for that is create some list items, or LIs. Take out the trash. This was a mistake. Do lesson 2. And now you can see on this page here, we have a simple bulleted list. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. There's a lot more. And I think that's it for like basics. Now we're going to talk about styling. So the HTML that we just wrote that kind of says what should go on the page, we can also specify how the page should look with styling. So let's do a quick example of that. Let's say for some reason I wanted to bring more attention to this this header here, and I want it to be red. What I can do is inside of the tag, so in between these two angle brackets here, but after the H1 tag name, I can write style equals and then 2 quotes. And now whatever I put in here is going to be used to style our HTML. So we want the color to be red. So I'll do color to specify what property we're changing, colon, and then what I want it to be, red. And then a semicolon to say, okay, that's it, we're done. Now, if I go over here and if I save this, this becomes red right here. This header tag becomes red. Yeah. So that's nice, but oh, before I move on, styles will also affect what is the content that's in between tags. So if you look at this UL right here, this list that we've got, if I were to give this a style of color green, it's going to apply that to every dot in or every bulleted item in the list. Does that make sense? Cool. So just know whatever styles you give to a tag, any of the tag, anything inside of those tags is also going to get that style. Sweet. So that's nice. It's cool. I mean, you can do a lot with that, but it gets a little tedious to have to, on every single tag, write style equals whatever and do your styles like that. So HTML also provides, I missed the slide. HTML also provides a style tag. And so we can just put that in the body and we can write style. And inside of this style tag, we'll be using something called CSS to style. You can look into that more. All we need to know is that it's going to tell our page how to look. So let's get rid of this style color equals red from this H1 and instead do it in here. Whoops. So what I can do to style something inside of a style tag is first I specify what I want to style. So in this case, I want to style the H1. Then I create some curly braces, hit enter, and now anything between these curly braces is going to be applied to an H1, right? So if I do color red, I forgot to show you guys that it wasn't red beforehand. I'll get rid of that. Now, if I add that color red back, it turns red. And one thing that's cool about this as well is if I create another H1 tag and I call this hello guys. This will the style we specified for the H1 in the style tags is going to be applied to every H1 on our page, right? And that's cool. That lets us not have to repeat stuff for all these different H1s that we want to make red. But sometimes you just want to make a specific H1 red, right? And you still want to use the style tag. So, yeah, what if we want multiple H1s to be red? We can use the style tag, and that will apply to everything on the page. Sometimes, though, we want to use the style tag, but we don't want every H1 to be red. So what can we do to solve that problem? We can use what's called an ID. And an ID is a unique identifier for any HTML tag, right? So it's pretty simple. It's kind of similar to the style thing. Inside of the H1 tag that I want to give an ID to, after the H1, I'll say ID equals, and then I'll give it its unique identifier. So I'll call this one lesson 2. Okay. So now you'll notice that, wait, I'm going to get rid of this style here. So it's nothing happened. All we did was said this H1, the lesson 2 H1 right here has the ID lesson 2. So now if we want to tell the HTML to style it a certain way, we can use a hashtag to say, I'm about to give you an ID. And then we simply type in what the ID is. And then that same curly brace pattern from before, and we can give it a color red. Sweet. Does that make sense? IDs make sense? Sound good? Anyone lost? All right, awesome. Okay, so now let me go back to my slides. What if I want to apply the same style, but to multiple different tags, right? So maybe I want this H1 and this P to be the same color. How could I do that? HTML provides another nice little thing for us called classes that we can use to achieve this. So how we can specify a class is we say class equals, and then the class name. This one's a bit hard. I'm going to just call it green text, or I'll call it red text. And then we can give that class to any element that we want to share, or any tag that we want to have the same styles. So now, since we want this P to be red as well, I'll do class equals red text. And then just like before, just like before, we now have to tell the style tag to actually style the red text class red. So what we can do to do that is to tell the style tag we're going to be specifying a class, we do a dot and then the class name. And so now when I save this, the lesson 2 text and the this is a paragraph text should both be red. And it works. Pretty cool. Does that all make sense so far? Classes. Main difference between IDs and classes. IDs are only for one element. You can only assign an ID to one element, one tag. Classes can be assigned to multiple tags, right? Cool. So now we're going to talk about positioning. And before we do, we're going to take a quick detour and we're going to learn about another HTML tag. This one's called div. And all a div is really is it's just a box, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create a div right here. And you'll notice if I save this page with the div, nothing happened. Well, that's because we need to give our div a, we need to specify how big our box should be. So we'll come into our style tag, we'll write div, curly braces, and then inside here, I'll give it a width. And when you're specifying widths and heights and stuff like that, you're going to use pixels. So we'll do 100 pixels, height 100 pixels. And now we can save that. And again, nothing happened. That's because our div is there. It's just, it's white and the page is white, so we can't see it. So what we need to do to be able to see it is we need to give it a background color. And I'm going to say that that's red. Now, when I save this, you'll see we have a 100 pixel by 100 pixel box. And so divs are really useful for grouping things together. You'll see them a lot. If you ever inspect Element on any website, you'll probably see a bunch of divs. They're one of the most versatile tags in HTML, and they're pretty cool. But what if we wanted to take this div and put it in the middle of the page? What if we wanted to center a div? How would we do that? Well, to do that, we can use something called Flex. And to get this started, I'm going to create a quick example let's see. So first, in order to start using Flex to position our elements, we need to have a parent div. So just a div that will contain other divs inside of it. And that needs to have a style with display flex. Okay, nothing happened. Great. Now we need to actually give it some stuff inside of it. So we're going to create some other divs, and I'm going to give this one a class of red box. Oop. And then I'm going to paste that a couple times. Or actually, no, let's start just with one. And now I'll change this from being targeting all divs to just targeting divs with the class red box. Cool, still looks the same. And now we have our flex div, and then inside of it, we have our red box. And so we can go ahead and give it a, to center this div, we can use a property called justify content. And justify content just means how it should go kind of horizontally, right? So in order to do that, now we can say justify content center. And as you can see, we've now put this div in the middle of the page. So that's a quick and easy way to do that. There's also some other justification. There's also some other aligning that you can do. Let's say I wanted to put it all the way to the right. I can say end, and that'll put it at the end of the page. If I wanted to put it all the way to the left where it was originally, but I wanted to specify it, I could say start. And then for this last example, we're going to talk about how to position it up and down. But in order to do that, we need to give a height to our parent div. And so what we'll do here is I'll say height. Let's just go 400 pixels. And now you can see, since it's so big, I can scroll. Oh, that's a good idea. I'm going to give this one a different background color so you can see that it's real. Let's see how this is going to look. I bet this is going to be awesome. Yeah. Okay. Christmas time. So now let's say we want it to be in the center horizontally, but now we also want it to be in the center vertically. How can we do that? So in order to do stuff vertically with Flex, we can say align items, and then we just specify before center. And now here you can see it is in the center both this way and this way. So that's pretty cool. We use Flex a lot. That's kind of why we went over it. All your projects will use it a lot. So yeah, that's good to know. I think that's it from me. Oh, yeah. It also works with multiple divs. So if I copy and paste this a couple times, you can see that these are all centered both horizontally and vertically. And I'm going to give these a border as well, just so we can see that. So with the border, we say how thick the border should be, if it should be solid or dashed, and then the color of the border. And so there we go. So these are all centered. And then did we say we're going to do the other spacing things or no? Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty cool. You know, we centered this stuff, but what if I wanted these to be like spaced evenly around this parent container here? Well, it's super easy with Flex. All you have to do is say space around, and it'll automatically set the space between each one to be the same. There are a couple other ones you can do. I would definitely recommend looking more into this. Flexbox is Flex is super powerful. We have some resources on it at the end, so I definitely recommend checking those out. Column, like Flex direction, yeah. Yeah. One more example. Sorry, guys. We're gonna do. What if we wanted, instead of these boxes here going in a row like this, what if we wanted to go in a column like this? Also super easy. All we have to do is specify the Flex direction. And for this, by default, it's row, but we want it to be column. And now when I do that, you can see that it's in a column instead of in a row. And yeah, those are a lot of tags, but you know, Google, right? Cool. Any questions about any of that? Anything confusing or any questions at all? What's up?
Be like a thing that we can see with all the tags that you just talked about.
Yeah. I don't remember everything. A great resource that I go to all the time is called W3 Schools. And I'm going to add HTML on there. And here they have like an HTML tutorial. They also have the CSS, which is how we've been styling stuff tutorial. And then they also have references, I think. Yeah. Or do they have references here? Like just a list of all the tags and all the stuff you can do.
I don't know. But maybe you just Google if you want to figure out how to do this.
Yeah. So if you want to know how to do something, let's say center a div. That's a big meme in the programming community. Super simple. How to center a div. You'll find an old Stack Overflow. Oh, wait, actually, W3 Schools has overtaken the Stack Overflow spot. And they'll tell you a different way that's not with Flex. But if you ever have a question about how to do something, just Google it. People have probably run into your same questions that you're trying to do. So Google is definitely your best friend when learning HTML and when building websites. Is there anything specifically you wanted to mention?
being able to Google things is a learned skill. It takes practice figuring out what to Google, where to look, how to parse the information. So, you don't know something, Google it. So
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
And
This website-
we don't retain any of that in our head to Google that pretty much every time.
Every time.
And this website is gonna be the first result on almost anything that you search, and they're very good, so.
Yeah.
Very good hands,
Awesome.
but yeah.
So that's all from me. I'm gonna pass it over to Alex, and he's gonna talk about making it a little bit more dynamic.
Spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all this HTML stuff is pretty cool, but it doesn't really do much right now, right? It basically is just a Word document where it's really nice, it's text on a screen, but I mean, if you've gone to websites, like normal websites, if you go to like Instagram or Facebook or anything, like they're interactive, right? You can do stuff with them. And the way that is done on the web is through JavaScript, which is the stuff we went over last week. So what I'm gonna do is basically just show you a quick, easy example of how to do that with JavaScript. How did he open this? Dude, how did he open his file explorer here? Yo, Xavier, how do you reopen the file explorer? You just drag it open? Oh, there it is. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna create a new file. I can close this one. Just middle mouse it. Okay, you got the fancy little mouse things. So I'm just gonna create a new file. Dude, okay. Yeah, you gotta use the top buttons. Okay, so I'm gonna call this clicker.html. And to start, I'm just gonna do what Xavier did at the beginning, which is, okay, there it is, HTML:5, hit enter, and we got, I'm gonna move this over a little bit. So now we've got our normal HTML document that we began with in the first place. Of course. So basically to show you what basic interaction is of a web page, I'm just going to create, if you've ever played the game like Cookie Clicker, just like a super simple version of that where you just click and a counter goes up. So to do that, let's see. Okay. Just going to create a new tag. I'm just going to call it an H1 for header. I'm going to call it clicker, or I'll say count actually. Or no, yeah, counter. Count. And then I'm going to create a new p tag down at the bottom, and I'm going to call this, I'm just going to say 0. Okay, 0. And that's basically just saying we're starting at 0, right? So if we save this and then begin it with live server, it should open. And there we go. So now we can see we've got our count displayed and 0. And well, we actually need something to click, right? So what we're going to create is a new tag called a button. And this button, all it's going to do is going to say, click me. And we save that and it'll show up. Move this back now. That's true, that's true. Yeah, so now we've got a button on the screen, but when we click it, we don't do anything at all. So just like Xavier used a new cool special tag, the style tag, we can actually, if we want to write actual JavaScript code in a file, we can use the script tag. And inside of the script tag, we can just write normal JavaScript. So what I can do is I can say, we'll write a new function, and we're going to call this when clicked. That's just any name. And I'm just going to do a console.log, which for those of you that are doing Java right now is just your system.out.println. And if you're doing C++, it's just your standard cout. And we're just going to say hello. And that's it. Super simple. Right? But when we click this button, nothing still happens. And the reason why that is because this function, even though we've written it, has zero attachment to anything on this HTML page. So what we want is that when this button is clicked for this function to trigger, right? So every time I click this button, this function is going to run. And just like there's an ID thing that you can specify and a class thing that you can specify and style things that you can specify, there's another attribute, which is what those things are called. They're called attributes, called onClick. And what this means is that when this item, in this case, a button is clicked, we can give it a function that we write, which is called when clicked. And make sure to include the parentheses or else it won't know it's a function. And that means that when we click this button, that function that we wrote called when click will trigger. So if we do this, well, we actually need to see where this console that it logs to is. And if you've ever inspected Elementor website, that's all that this is. There's a lot of complicated stuff here, but we only really need to look at the console. And if I save this, which is already saved, when I click this button, you can see that is very tiny for you guys. Okay, well, you can. I don't think you can. Not on. Yeah, dang. All right, well, if you squint your eyes really hard, you can see that up here at the top, we got a little hello message right here. And what that means is that now we've got it up and running to where when we click this button, that function is running. So now we know that they're connected properly. But what we really want to do, if it's cookie clicker, is make this 0 turn into a 1, make that 1 turn into a 2, so on and so forth. And what we need to do is, I'm going to write a new function. And I'm going to call this increment counter. And what this function is going to do is it's going to take in this 0, or it's going to get this 0 from the HTML page. It's going to add 1 to it. So in this case, it's 0, and it's going to plus 1, so it's 1. And if that was a 1, it would add 1 to it. It would be a 2. So first we need to grab the 0, add 1 to it, and then put that new number back into the HTML. So to start with the first piece, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new variable, and we're going to call this current value. And this is going to be the 0. So the way that we want to grab a specific thing off of an HTML page is using a unique identifier, which Xavier thankfully just talked about, and that's just an ID. So we're going to give this p tag an ID. Did I hate her? Yeah. I use them for everything. So we're going to give it an ID, and we're going to call this counter value. And again, this can be anything, but it just needs to be unique for this element. So we're going to grab this. We're going to use something called document dot get element by ID. And you can see that it's autofilled. And then we just specify the ID that we want to get it by, which is counter, not that, counter value. And you can see why having a unique identifier is really nice, because it allows us to say we want this specific one. And since we know that's the only one on the page, that's really, really nice for this. And then we're going to grab the actual text, because what this does is it grabs the actual p tag. We want the value inside the p tag or the text inside of it. So we're going to say .text content. Sweet. And that is extremely long-winded, but what that does do is get us that 0. So if we save that, and we want to actually log that we get that current value. And to make sure that it goes from 0 to 1, we're just going to log that as well. So plus 1. Now, if we save that, what we should have is we should log a 1. Okay. Oh, I need to refresh.
Gotta change the onClick.
Oh, you're right. You see, this is a very, very common thing that I do all the time. Now we just need to change the onClicked increment to the new function. Sweet. Now when we click the button, well, if you know, you guys can't see it. Okay. If I could zoom in, what you guys would see is that what that actually says is 0 and then a 1 following it. And the reason why is because if I just delete all of this and say type of what? Type of current value. What it'll display, again, is if you could see it properly, is that it's a string. Now, you guys have dealt with strings and stuff in Java, right? At this point? Yeah, so it's just characters, it's just text. And if we plus 1 to it, what it's interpreting that as is saying, put this 1 at the back of the string. But what we want to do is get the number. And so to specify to JavaScript, because remember, this is not TypeScript, which is what TypeScript is very nice for, is we want to specify that this is a number value. So we do this, which is number, and put parentheses around the whole thing. Then when I print out the value of content again, or the counter, if you can see it again, it says number up there now, which means when we add 1 to it, we should get just a normal 1. Current value plus 1. Cool. So now we print out a 1, if you could see it. And what that means is that we've now actually done the first 2 steps, which is grab the 0, added a 1 to it. So now what we need to do is put it back into the HTML page. And to do that, it's basically just a reverse of the first step, where in the first step we grabbed it, the second step we step it, or we set it. So we do that exact same thing again, which is document.get element by ID, counter value, dot text content. And just like we can read in the value, we can set the value. So we just do equals and then current value plus 1. And what this should do is turn that 0 into a 1. This is a big moment. And there we go. And if we keep going, what it's going to do now is it's going to read that 1, add 1 to it, and turn it into a 2. And there we go. So now we've got a very basic cookie clicker system going here. But if you might have noticed, this is a lot more work than it's really worth to make cookie clicker. And it's also, if you think about the real scale of what a web application like Instagram or Facebook or even things like Google, what they're doing is that would be a lot of this stuff. In fact, a ton of this stuff. So that's actually leading into what we're going to be talking about next week, which is going into React, which is kind of combining these 2 things right here, this HTML and JavaScript, which makes it a little bit easier to think about building large scale and even small scale web applications. And we'll get to that next week. No reason to worry about it right now, but we'll show you. It's really cool. That's where the real fun stuff begins. But yeah, are there any questions on any of this JavaScript stuff or anything? Cool. You got anything else, Xavier?
Not for everyone. So.
Awesome. Oh, what does that mean?
Just the
Not that one, where it has all the space.
Likes, box, website, like that.
CSStricks.com. Yeah, the first one. When you're doing divs, which are just the boxes that hold other things, there's a lot of different things that you can do with them, positioning, where everything is inside of those, how those are positioned on the page. And it's kind of confusing. So if you just go to this CSS tricks and just look up like a guide to Flexbox, and you can just scroll through this, Alex. It'll just kind of tell you what everything does. Just scroll. So if I want to change the order that some things are, I can use the order property. If I want to, if I have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, if I want it to instead be 4, 3, 2, 1, I can use the flex direction or reverse that. Flex row, I can have things be different sizes and take up different proportions of the page. Flex wrap, maybe with that row of boxes we had 3, maybe we had 10. We don't want all of those side by side. We want the first 5 and then the next 5. We can specify that with flex wrap. I don't know what those do. So there's a bunch of different things you can do with Flex, and this is just a good tool to use, because you'll be using those very frequently with divs and Flex buttons.
Yes. Yeah, and this is 100% a thing you learn by doing. Because there are an infinite amount of things that this stuff does. There's already like 30 attributes of this on the page. So just don't worry about remembering.
Yeah, I usually
For-
can't do a single thing that's on this page without looking at this page. Yeah, no.
Which is extremely common. Yeah.
Awesome. Any questions about anything? No? Okay, I'm gonna stop